There will not be a single bad matchup and bad take in this video that I am making right now. UFC 324 just took place. I am going to be doing fantasy matchups for every notable fighter on the card. It wasn't the best card, but it was decent. You know, first of the year. The first of the year cards are usually not the best. But we're going to start at the very top. This is obvious. I mean, the interim champion has to fight the undisputed champion. Gaethje versus Topuria has to happen. It's not the most hyped up matchup. Everybody wants to see Topuria versus Sarukian, myself included. That's the big matchup. That's the 50-50 fight. And I don't know who I would pick to win that fight if it were announced. And don't be confident saying that you would pick one guy over the other. That is a true 50-50 matchup. I don't know who would win. Both of them are elite mixed martial artists. Gaethje, though, how would Gaethje do up against Topuria? I'm here to tell you right now, like, in combat sports, there's always a puncher's chance. There's always some bullshit that can happen. You know, maybe Topuria throws a kick and breaks his foot and the fight's called off and Gaethje has his hand raised. You know, something like that could happen. But getting rid of those types of once-in-a-lifetime black swan events, Gaethje loses this fight 99 times out of 100. I know Gaethje had the staph infection on his neck. I know he was probably on medication and he was probably compromised. But dude just looked bad up against Paddy. He did not look like his normal self. That was not the Gaethje that we have seen face off against Michael Chandler. That's not the Gaethje we've seen him face up against Fiziev or Dustin Poirier. That is a different dude. He looks sluggish. He looks slow. I could just see Topuria finishing him off in so many different ways. And, you know, it's unfortunate that the matchup between Paddy and Gaethje had to be like that, and Sarukian, you know, couldn't fight Ilya sooner. But you have to make this fight sooner rather than later. Hopefully Gaethje heals fast. Do the fight in June. Gaethje says he wants to fight in the White House. Just do it. I think it makes sense for the White House, but you know, he is going to get knocked out, and I don't know if they would do that as a main event. And an American being knocked out in the White House like that, that's kind of like a bad look. I don't think the UFC is really interested in that, but we'll see what happens. We move on to Paddy, though. What's going to happen with Paddy Pimblett? He is in a very tough situation right now because he is ranked 5 at 155, but he doesn't deserve to be in that spot. He never did. He was gifted the most favorable matchups because of his Dana White privilege, and now he's stuck there. He's stuck in this division with killers above him and below him. A lot of these ranked guys now beat him. These new guys that just entered the rankings, Fares Ziam, Manuel Torres, Mauricio Rufy, they all beat him. He probably has a better chance of beating Mauricio Rufy than some of these other guys, but like BSD beats him. Fiziev beats him. So I'm thinking like a comeback matchup because, you know, people love Paddy. He's got like 5 million followers on Instagram. He's big in England. They got to put him back on a British UFC event. And I'm thinking, who's another guy that is a grappler, that sucks with his hands, that has no knockout potential, just like Paddy? Mateusz Gamrot. That is the perfect matchup for Paddy right now. If you're a Paddy fan, it's a winnable fight for Paddy. I don't know if I would pick him. I think it's a 50-50 fight. Both guys have terrible striking, and both guys are mostly grapplers. The thing with Gamrot is, he loses to Oliveira. He had a free win against Fiziev because Fiziev injured himself, and he was celebrating afterwards like a fucking asshole. He beats Ludovic Klein. But before that, people forget, man, this was a long time ago. He beat Arman Sarukian with the grappling. If you beat Arman Sarukian, you could easily beat Paddy Pimblett. And this is like the most favorable matchup for Paddy right now at the moment. And it's still dangerous for him because Paddy was never that good. I'm sorry to tell you, if you're a Paddy fan, he was never that good. It is a testament of the stupidity of the casual fan base that he was a minus 235 favorite. It made no sense whatsoever. But this is the matchup that makes the most sense, and I think most people would agree on this. Because, I mean, like, who's Gamrot going to fight now? Who does Gamrot actually want to fight? Like, there's nobody left for him. I don't know if they're going to do Cyril Gane Aspinall 2 in England. They should do that fight in England, and they should probably do this fight as a co-main event. Luke Riley should be in there. Bring all the British bums, yeah? Bring all the British bums in Manchester or Liverpool, yeah? Do it in England, in London, who cares? And there's another British fighter that I will be talking about in this video who should go up against, and they can also do that fight later on in the video. But this matchup makes complete sense. We move on, though. Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley deserves the rematch with Petr Yan. I made a video in the past saying Petr Yan should fight either whoever puts on a better performance between Sean and Song Yadong, or Umar versus Figgy. And I'll talk about Umar later, but I think Sean did a better job facing against Song Yadong than Umar did against Figgy. And I don't want to see the Merab trilogy with Petr Yan, because there is some talks that the UFC is looking into that. No, dude. I don't want to see that fight. I think Petr Yan easily beats Merab again. The reason why he didn't beat him the first time was because he legitimately injured his hand. And who do you think Petr Yan is more interested in fighting? What would wake him up early in the morning to go train super hard to face Merab a third time, which isn't going to bring as much money, and I don't know where they do that fight. Are they going to do it in America? Whereas he can get back his revenge against Sean O'Malley that robbed him in the first fight, and this will be a championship fight. It'll be 5 rounds, so Petr Yan has more time to work with. You know Petr Yan wants to fight Sean O'Malley more than anybody else. He wants to get that lick back. He wants to redeem himself. He wants to get the prostitute, as he calls him. He wants to get the one that got away. He needs to enact his revenge. And a 5-rounder, like striker versus striker, all in all, this is the more entertaining fight. I don't want to see Petr Yan face Umar. Not yet, at least. Eventually, that fight's going to happen. And eventually, I'll be hyped about it. But right now, it makes complete sense for Petr Yan to do the rematch with Sean O'Malley. I hope the UFC agrees with me. Sean's got the Dana White privilege as well. And it wasn't the best performance against Song Yadong. Some people were saying that it was a robbery. Song obviously won the first round. But based on damage, based on, all the blood coming out of Song Yadong, yeah, you got to give that one to Sean. I didn't think it was a robbery personally. I know that's controversial, but this is the fight to make. Highly anticipated rematch, 5-rounder. We move on to Waldo Cortez Acosta. And I know that the deal with Aspinall and Cyril Gane has to get through, but I think Waldo deserves a title shot. So I put Aspinall's face up here just because he is the reigning champion. But if Cyril Gane beats Aspinall, then they need to do Waldo versus Cyril Gane. Waldo needs that title shot. I know Volkov, some people say Volkov deserves it, but yeah, he was robbed by Gane in the rematch. He survived Jailton Almeida in a horrible fight. But just because you survived Jailton Almeida doesn't mean you should get the next title shot. Waldo has faced 5 different fights in the past year and a half. Based on his activity, he deserves it. He came in on short notice to knock out the Dagestani diabetic Shamil Gaziev. Brutally knocks out Ante Delija after getting eye poked. Before that, the Pavlovich fight, not much happened. He survived against Pavlovich, beat Sergey Spivak, beat Ryan Spann, fraud checks Rebelis Despain, that big 6'8", scary Cuban that's knocking everybody out in karate combat. I think he's only had 1 loss in the UFC, or maybe 2 losses. I think he lost to Rogerio Pizarro de Lima a long time ago, or I could be confusing that with somebody else. But, he did lose to Pavlovich, and I think he also fought Lucas Brzeski. Oh, yeah, he did. He brutally knocked out Brzeski, a faceplant KO. I'm hyped up on this Dominican white man. And he called out Curtis Blades. Here's the thing. If he doesn't get a title shot, he's just going to clean out the entire heavyweight division. He's beating everybody. If he fights Curtis Blades and he beats him, that's just one less future title contender for him. You know? And Volkov, I don't want to see Waldo versus Volkov. Unfortunately for Waldo, I do see Volkov beating Waldo in that one. Just because of the length, the reach. I don't think Waldo's going to be able to close the distance as much against a guy like Volkov. Volkov always thrives against these types of shorter, plottier strikers. And it's just recently, like, you know, a genetic specimen like Gane can survive against Volkov. Almeida can stall and lay on top of him. But no, Waldo needs the next title shot after Aspinall Gane 2 takes place, and that's that. That's not a controversial opinion. It makes sense. He's a company man. He shows up. He knocks guys out. Great win against Derek Lewis, but mostly because Derek Lewis is just old and fat at this point. But what can you do? Gene Silva. Gene Silva, who should he fight next? I'm looking at featherweight, and Yair Rodriguez hasn't fought in a while. Had a win against Patricio Pitbull, so just do that one. I don't know what's going to happen with, like, Gene Silva's trajectory. Probably another 2 good fights for him to get a title shot. If he gets a brutal knockout against Rodriguez and then fights somebody in the top 3, they got to give him a title shot at that point. Because, I mean, I don't know if it was confirmed or not that Evloev and Lerone Murphy are fighting. Whoever wins that matchup, if it does get announced, needs that title shot. And then afterwards, you know, they could do Gene Silva versus the loser of that fight. But in the meantime, Rodriguez is doing nothing, just jerking off. You know, he's been very picky, calling for the Volk rematch. It's not going to happen. Get in line. You got to keep fighting. You do nothing for 3 rounds against Patricio Pitbull. Fight Gene Silva. Because Gene Silva, I think, is now number 6 at featherweight. So they got to do that fight. Ateba Gautier. Who should he fight? Now, I thought Ateba Gautier was going to get a round 1 knockout. And it looked like he was close to. He knocked down Pulyaev. He was so close to destroying him, but he doesn't like to do ground and pound. And that is scary because that to me signifies that this guy has no ground game at all. And the first guy that's going to take him down is going to dominate him. And like I said, you know, West Africans, great genetics, but they don't come from a wrestling and grappling culture the way that other parts of the world do, like in the Caucasus or in Europe or, you know, Brazil where they have BJJ. Like, they're just pure strikers and pure power and physicality and physique. So I'm thinking Marvin Vettori. I've said this in like my last video where Marvin Vettori, he had a fight with Bruno Ferreira. They need to do this one. Unstoppable force versus immovable object. Can Ateba Gautier crack this giant Italian chin that Marvin Vettori has? The greatest chin in the whole sport right now belongs to Marvin Vettori, without a doubt. He was eating bombs from Jared Cannonier. Can he eat bombs from Gautier? We have to find out. Marvin Mussolini versus middleweight Ngannou. I hope this fight's announced. I hope they don't cut Vettori just yet. If Vettori loses this one, then, you know, they can do whatever they want with him. I think he'll be like on a 4-fight losing streak after that. He is just on a big losing streak, L after L after L. To think that this guy fought for the title. Middleweight was shit back in the day. This guy fought Adesanya for a title shot. So, yeah, we got to see if Vettori can withstand those punches. I think he might. It'll probably be another decision win for Gautier. But, yeah, Gautier, ignore that video I made about West African genetics because it kind of aged badly. Even though he won this fight, doesn't have a lot of finishing potential up against some of these dudes that are survivable. And Pulyaev, he just looks like a chinny dude, and he couldn't get him out of there after 3 rounds. And he was hitting him with those body shots. He was running around the cage. He won a round. And some people could have said that he probably won the fight, but based on the knockdowns, Gautier took it, and that's that. Umar Nurmagomedov. He's not going to get a title shot. He had a very boring fight against Figgy. No finishing potential. I picked him to win based on submission, but I kind of knew deep down in my mind that it was going to be a decision win. Boring, typical Dagestani fighter. No damage output. Unless it's Ioni Barcelos. He doesn't have finishing potential. He's boring. Couldn't finish Corey Sandhagen. Did like no damage to Corey Sandhagen. Did no damage to Figgy. He did damage to Merab, which is kind of weird. But boring fighter versus boring fighter. Ayman Zahabi. Money Manziel MMA. If you're watching this video, I know how big of a fan you are of Ayman Zahabi. He is your most favorite fighter. And Ayman Zahabi's on a good winning streak. Shout out to Money Manziel, by the way. I watched some of his videos. It's the fight to make because Umar needs more activity. He needs, great wins against Mario Batista. Great. It's the fight to make. You beat Mario Batista. Now you beat Figgy. If you beat Ayman Zahabi, because there's not going to be anybody else at the very top of bantamweight at that point, after they do Petr Yan O'Malley 2, then they can do Petr Yan Nurmagomedov. And that'll be a hyped up fight when it's announced, but not next, right? Not next. Merab, if Merab's going to keep fighting at bantamweight, or if he moves up to featherweight, like if he keeps fighting at bantamweight, they do Merab versus the winner of Batista versus Oliveira. That's happening in like 2 weeks. They can do that one. And I know Merab, very active, has had a lot of title fights in a single year, and because of that, people are thinking that he deserves that trilogy with Petr Yan. I get those points. I do. I get that way of thinking, but this is a company after all. Companies want to make money, and Sean O'Malley makes more money than Merab 3. So, in the meantime, Umar versus Ayman Zahabi. It's going to be a boring shit-ass fight. Maybe they could do it for like a main event fight night in some Muslim country, so that they can fight for 5 rounds instead of 3. If it's a 3-round fight, we're not going to see a finish. That's not going to happen. Zahabi is so fucking boring, dude. And Marlon Vera is also boring, and just watching that shit was so bad. So make it a 5-rounder for a UFC Fight Night main event in like Abu Dhabi or somewhere. They can do some other Muslim countries. They went to Azerbaijan. Do they have stadiums in Dagestan? They have to have some stadium there. They got to go to Dagestan eventually, Last fighter is Josh Hokett. Great win against Denzel Bumman, who didn't throw a single fucking punch. I don't think Josh is going to make it that far. He's only 6'1", 230 pounds. But, there's a small little hype train forming up on him. I think, as I mentioned before, big card in England. Paddy versus Gamrot. Aspinall versus Gon 2. Josh Hokett versus Mickey Pokey Piggy Parkin, yeah? Mick Parkin hasn't fought, his last fight was the loss against Tybura, I think. He doesn't throw a lot. He's, very passive. And, he had a knockout against Lucas Brzeski, but who doesn't have a knockout against Lucas Brzeski? So, because Josh Hokett is a very aggressive fighter, Mick Parkin is forced to throw punches. And I think because of that, it's going to be a decent one-round swang and bang type of fight. Mick Parkin does have hands when he throws them. So, do this in England. America, they could probably do this in the White House card. Now that I think about it, they could also do that. You just know Josh Hokett is a big Trump supporter. Do it in the White House because it's the 250th anniversary of America. So, fight the British, fight the redcoat menace in the White House lawn. Mick Parkin, get him in here. White House card. They could do that, or they could do it in England. Big heavyweight fight. Well, not really, but I would be hyped up for it. I'm always hyped up for these heavyweight slugfests when they're good. When they suck, they're the worst thing in the world. But when they're good, like, I'm always going to be hyped up. Like, I'm hyped up on Steven Asplund based on his last performance. And based on Josh Hokett's last 2 performances in the UFC, I'm hyped on him too. I'm hyped on heavyweights that get knockouts. It is always entertaining to see big men doing lots of damage to other big men. This is why the heavyweight division in boxing is the most popular division. So that's that. I think these are the matchups that make the most sense. If you agree with me, like the video, comment, subscribe. I'll catch you in the next one, motherfuckers. Peace out.